there once lived a girl named Binta. She was only 16, full of dreams and hope, even though life wasn't always kind to her. Her father, Mr. Yusuf, worked as a driver for one of the wealthiest families in the city, the Obinas. Despite their humble life, Binta and her father shared a bond built on love and trust. Binta was a bright student and loved by everyone in her small neighborhood. But she often felt out of place in the luxurious mansion where her father worked. The Obina family, especially their son Kelechi, treated her like she was invisible. Little did she know, one night would change her life forever. It was a Friday evening, and the Obina mansion buzzed with excitement. Kelechi, the eldest son, was throwing a grand party to celebrate getting into university. His father spared no expense, bringing in expensive food, drinks, and loud music that echoed through the estate. That evening, Binta had accompanied her father to the mansion. Mr. Yusuf had been called to drive the guests, and Binta decided to lend a hand in the kitchen, helping the house staff with the endless trays of food. She was shy, keeping to herself as the rich teenagers laughed and danced. But soon, she caught Kelechi's eye. Kelechi was tall, handsome, and arrogant. He was used to getting what he wanted, and tonight, he wanted to amuse himself. His friends, drunk and mischievous, egged him on. "Hey, Kelechi," one of them slurred. "That driver's daughter, isn't she cute? You should, show her a good time." Kelechi smirked. To him, Binta was just another servant's child, someone beneath him. He saw no harm in playing a little game. Kelechi approached Binta, his smile charming but fake. "Hey, Binta, right? You're always so quiet. Come, let me show you something cool in the garden. You'll love it." Binta hesitated, feeling uneasy. "No, I should stay in the kitchen," she whispered. But Kelechi insisted, and not wanting to upset him or cause trouble for her father, she reluctantly followed. They walked past the bright lights of the party to a dark, quiet corner of the garden. Binta's heart began to race. "What is this place? Why are we here?" she asked nervously. Kelechi's friends appeared out of the shadows, their laughter cold and cruel. Before Binta could react, Kelechi grabbed her arm tightly. "Relax, it's just a game," he said, his voice suddenly different, darker. What followed was a nightmare Binta would never forget. Kelechi and his friends overpowered her, ignoring her cries and struggles. They tore at her clothes, their laughter mocking her terror. Binta begged them to stop, tears streaming down her face, but her words fell on deaf ears. They hurt her in ways that words can barely describe. Binta felt every ounce of her dignity stripped away as Kelechi and his friends treated her like nothing more than a toy. The physical pain was unbearable, but the emotional pain, the feeling of being so helpless and discarded, was even worse. When they were done, they left her there, broken and bleeding. One of the boys even took out his phone and recorded her sobbing, saying, "This will be our little secret." They laughed as they walked away, leaving her alone in the cold night. For hours, Binta stayed there, unable to move. Her body ached, and her heart felt like it had shattered into a million pieces. She didn't know how to face her father, or the world, after what had just happened. Mr. Yusuf found her later that night. He had been looking for her everywhere, worried when she didn't return to the kitchen. When he saw her lying in the garden, bruised and trembling, his heart broke. "Binta! My child, what happened?" he cried, wrapping his jacket around her. Binta couldn't speak, all she could do was sob into her father's arms. The ride home was silent except for Binta's quiet sniffles. Mr. Yusuf didn't ask questions. He didn't need to, he could see the pain in her eyes. When they got home, Binta finally told him everything. She told him about Kelechi, his friends, and the horrible things they had done. Mr. Yusuf was furious. I will not let them get away with this, he vowed. The next day, they went to the police station to file a report. But the Obinas were too powerful. Chief Obina's lawyers dismissed Binta's claims as lies, saying she was only trying to tarnish their reputation. Witnesses were paid off, evidence disappeared, and soon, the case was closed. Binta's name was dragged through the mud. People whispered about her, calling her a liar, a troublemaker. The shame was too much to bear, and Mr. Yusuf decided they had to leave the city. In their new village, Binta stayed quiet about her past. But deep inside, she made a promise to herself, I will not let them win. I will rise above this. Binta threw herself into her studies, determined to build a better future. She excelled in school, earning scholarships that took her to the best universities abroad. She studied law, specializing in helping victims of abuse and injustice. Over the years, Binta transformed. She was no longer the scared girl from the garden. She became a strong, confident woman, a voice for the voiceless. 15 years had passed since that horrific night. Binta, now 31, was a far cry from the frightened girl who once hid in her father's arms. She had grown into a powerful woman, a lawyer who stood tall in courtrooms and fought for those who had no voice. Her organization, Justice for All, had helped countless girls reclaim their lives after enduring trauma. She was admired, respected, and, most importantly, at peace with herself. But there was one part of her past she had never fully confronted, Kelechi. She thought of him sometimes, not with anger, but with curiosity. Did he ever think about what he had done? Did guilt keep him awake at night? Did he even remember her? These thoughts remained unanswered until one fateful evening at a charity gala she was invited to attend. The room was buzzing with chatter, filled with some of the city's most influential figures. As Binta stood on stage, speaking passionately about forgiveness and the importance of giving victims a second chance, her eyes scanned the crowd. That's when she saw him. Kelechi stood near the back of the room, his eyes fixed on her. He looked older, thinner, and tired, as though life had weighed heavily on him. Gone was the confident, flashy boy who had once sneered at her. In his place stood a man who looked broken. For a moment, Binta's voice faltered. The memories came rushing back, the garden, his laughter, her cries. But she quickly steadied herself, finishing her speech with grace. The audience erupted in applause, but Binta's mind was elsewhere. After the event, as people mingled and exchanged pleasantries, Kelechi made his way toward her. Binta noticed him coming and felt her heartbeat quicken. She wasn't sure how she'd react. Would she confront him? Walk away? When he finally reached her, he hesitated. His once bright eyes now carried a sadness that was hard to miss. Binta, he said softly, almost as if he was afraid to speak her name. She looked at him, her face calm but unreadable. Kelechi. There was a long silence between them, the weight of the past hanging heavily in the air. Finally, Kelechi spoke. I've wanted to say this for years, he began, his voice trembling. I don't expect you to forgive me, and I know I don't deserve your kindness. What I did to you, it was unforgivable. I was young, foolish, and cruel. I've carried that guilt with me every day since. Binta's expression didn't change, but her heart ached at his words. She had imagined this moment so many times, but now that it was happening, she didn't know how to feel. I lost everything, Binta, Kelechi continued. My father's business collapsed, my friends abandoned me, and I've spent years trying to figure out who I am. But nothing has hurt more than knowing I destroyed a part of you. I'm sorry. I'm truly, deeply sorry. Binta took a deep breath. Kelechi, she said, her voice steady, what you did to me was the worst thing anyone could ever do. For years, I hated you. I hated myself. I thought I would never be whole again. Kelechi's eyes filled with tears. But, she continued, I've learned that holding on to anger only hurts me. I've healed, Kelechi. I've built a life I'm proud of. And for my sake, not yours, I forgive you. Tears rolled down Kelechi's face. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you so much. After that night, Binta thought she'd never see Kelechi again. But fate had other plans. A few weeks later, Kelechi showed up at her office. He looked nervous, holding a folder filled with papers. I don't mean to bother you, he said, but I've been working on something, and I think it might help your organization. Curious, Binta invited him in. Kelechi explained that he had been volunteering at a shelter for abused women and children. He had used his connections to raise funds for the shelter and wanted to partner with her NGO to provide legal support for the victims. Binta was surprised. She had assumed his apology at the gala was the end of his journey, but it seemed Kelechi was determined to make amends. Over the next few months, they worked together closely. At first, Binta kept her distance, unsure if she could fully trust him. But as time went on, she began to see a different side of Kelechi. He was no longer the arrogant boy who had once hurt her. He was patient, humble, and genuinely dedicated to helping others. One evening, after a long day of work, Kelechi turned to her. Binta, he said, I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want you to know that working with you has been the greatest honor of my life. You've shown me what true strength looks like. Binta felt a warmth in her chest. For the first time, she saw Kelechi not as the boy who had broken her, but as a man trying to rebuild himself. Months turned into years, and Binta and Kelechi's partnership grew stronger. What began as a professional relationship slowly turned into a friendship. They shared stories, laughed over silly mistakes, and supported each other through challenges. One day, as they walked through the garden of the shelter, Kelechi stopped and turned to her. Binta, he said, his voice soft, I know I don't deserve this, but I care about you deeply. And I would like to spend the rest of my life proving that I've changed. Binta was stunned. She hadn't expected this. But as she looked into his eyes, she saw something she hadn't seen before, sincerity. I don't know, Kelechi, she said honestly. This isn't something I can decide easily. I understand, he said. Take all the time you need. Over time, Binta realized that her feelings for Kelechi had changed. She no longer saw him as her enemy, but as someone who had fought to become better. Slowly, she let her guard down. 3 years after their reunion, Binta and Kelechi stood together in a small, beautiful garden, surrounded by close friends and family. They had decided to get married, not because they had forgotten the past, but because they had chosen to build a new future together. As they exchanged vows, Binta felt a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. She had turned her pain into strength, and Kelechi had found redemption in helping others. Together, they proved that even the darkest stories could have a light at the end.
You're now watching Moonlight African Folktales. Subscribe for more.